A number of the Kanak leaders come from the CCAT movement. It's a network of activists who've been organising protests over many months, calling for changes to French policy. Christian Tin, who's one of the leaders of CCAT, has been transferred to a prison on the Swiss and German border of France. A number of other people have been flown from Noumea to prisons scattered across France while awaiting trial for um, allegations that they've been involved in organising the riots that we've seen over recent weeks in New Caledonia.
Well, they argue that it's just activism and their actions don't deserve such a response, taking them to trial. What is the French government's stance on this?
The French government has set the judicial authorities a significant challenge. There are allegations of a conspiracy to organise riots, other serious charges that are before an investigating judge. But the independence movement argues that this has been heavily politicised. The choice of people who've been arrested has been questioned by their lawyers, who've also raised concern that it'd be very difficult to mount a proper defence given that they're 70,000 kilometres away. Many of those who've been arrested in recent weeks as leaders of CCAT are supporters or aligned with the largest pro-independence party. Indeed, one woman transferred to France is the chief of staff to the president of the Congress, veteran Kanak politician Roch Momitan. So the independence movement has come out and denounced this process as politicised. And I think it's added to fuel to the fire. Last night there were significant protests throughout the capital, Noumea, but also in other parts of the country, including new roadblocks being put up, an attack on a police station with arson alleged. There's some serious tensions rising in a week that people are moving towards the French national elections.
Tell us a bit more about the security situation now ahead of that first round of voting as well. And could the violence really escalate compared to last month's riots?
President Macron, when he visited New Caledonia on the 23rd of May, said that police forces deployed to New Caledonia would stay there, quote, as long as is necessary, indeed up to the Olympics and the Paralympics. France in late July is due to host the Olympic Games, and more than 3,700 police, riot squads, gendarme and special anti-terrorist squads, backed by armoured cars, are deployed on the ground. Things had slightly calmed over the last couple of weeks, but the arrest and deportation of some of these key Kanak leaders has sparked new protests over the last 36 hours, including clashes between stone-throwing youths and police firing tear gas. With only days to the first round of National Assembly elections on Sunday, there's a real problem in maintaining order in coming days.
And Nic, the initial riots were over electoral reforms that would have allowed long-term residents to take part in local polls. Can you tell us again, explain to us, why are the Indigenous Kanak people and independent supporters so against this move, and where does this law stand at now? Because I understand President Macron had suspended the reforms for the moment.
The country has been governed by an agreement known as the Noumea Accord since 1998. One of the unique features of it was that it created the notion of a New Caledonian citizenship as distinct from being French citizens. That means that there's restrictions on who can vote for the local political institutions, there's priority for employment for locals, and indeed a recognition of Kanak culture and identity, the Indigenous Melanesian people. France unilaterally has been trying to roll back some of the definitions of who can vote. The independence movement has long argued that this should only be done as part of a comprehensive agreement looking forward with the agreement between supporters and opponents of independence about what comes next. France moving ahead with this. President Macron, Overseas Minister Darmanin, have really created this turmoil by unilaterally trying to change the rules of who can vote. It's much more complex than that, but that's how Indigenous Kanak perceive this, that only making up about 41% of the population. They fear that adding an estimated 25,000 new voters to the rolls in a country of only 270,000 people, it's a significant change, and that's been partly the trigger for this incredible turmoil that we see just off the coast of Queensland.
Well, Emmanuel Macron has promised that the law will not be pushed through by force. As you mentioned, we've got the first round of elections coming up this weekend. There's snap elections. What do you think will come out of these polls?
Speaking to people in Noumea over recent days, there's a great level of fear and uncertainty about what's happening. There's been major economic damage to New Caledonia over 6 or 7 weeks of conflict. Thousands of people have lost their jobs, businesses badly damaged. The level of uncertainty about what will happen with this gamble that President Macron has taken to hold snap elections. Current polling suggests he won't do well in the 2 rounds of voting on the 30th of June, the 7th of July. Indeed, the Rassemblement National, the extreme right party under Marine Le Pen, is polling very well. For people who want support from the French state for reconstruction, for people who want a clear pathway forward to resolve long-standing questions around independence, there's a level of uncertainty and doubt about who will be governing France. And it will take some weeks before they have a new Prime Minister, a new cabinet, a new overseas minister. Those are weeks that people can't afford given the crisis that's underway at the moment.
And just lastly, with those people who have been flown to France to be tried, what do you think will come out of that? What is the timeline and what sentence could they possibly be facing if they're found guilty?
Well, no one really knows. The instructing judge had a round of discussions with their lawyers, and they were flown out in the middle of the night straight after that. I think there's a real fear that in the context of a national election, the politicisation of this judicial process is something that independent supporters feel very strongly. And that's why we've seen over the last 36 hours this resurgence of protests. Young people saying, free our comrades, putting up more roadblocks, clashing with police. And, I think this is an issue that has become a regional issue. The Pacific Islands Forum meets in the last week of August in Tonga. Prime Minister Albanese will travel to meet with fellow presidents and prime ministers from around the region. This crisis in New Caledonia has moved beyond a matter for France. In fact, it's damaging France's diplomacy in the region. And this is something that neighbouring Melanesian countries particularly, but the wider Pacific Islands Forum will have high on their agenda in a couple of months' time.